So in January, you posted a couple Instagram things that sort of implied that Tupac was alive and in Malaysia.
Yeah.
And also, I think you said some things maybe last year
I said
as
it,
well.
the whole world stopped moving. Like, everybody's like, what's going on?
Tupac Shakur, being one of the most influential rappers of all time, had an impact so big that by the time of his death, his fans or people in general weren't ready to just accept he could even die. There have been countless conspiracy theories about Tupac's death, but I'll debunk the three biggest ones.
In the street, when it happened, we didn't know if we heard gunshots or we didn't really know exactly what we heard. We heard a lot of screaming, a lot of cars screeching. We were just hanging out, taking photos at the time. We ran up the street as cops were running past us, and by the time we got here, they were already taking, which now I found out was Tupac, into the helicopter away. He had been shot.
Tupac faked his death and escaped to Cuba. It's the most popular theory since the 90s, and those who spread claim that there were many indicators proving for it to be true. In one of his hit songs, Tupac's lyrics go like this: "I heard a rumor, I died, murdered in cold blood, dramatized. Pictures of me in my final stage, you know mama cried." But that was fiction. Some coward got the story twisted. Like it no longer existed, mysteriously missing. Now, along with song lyrics and helicopter sightings, some people also conspire about Tupac having a body double present in MGM Grand that night. But even if we consider all of these clues to be evidence, it still doesn't make sense because the authorities had a tangible proof in form of Tupac's body. After Shakur's death, policemen collected his blood-stained jewelry as a court evidence, along with an autopsy performed and his death certificate signed by Dr. Ed Brown at the Clark County Coroner's Office.
Tupac was looking to leave Death Row Records. Is that true?
You should answer that. You don't take a person like Tupac who, if you listen to every song on All Eyez on Me, every song on Makaveli, every time he do an interview, what's the first thing he say? Death Row. Tupac loved Death Row. Tupac loved me, I loved him. Tupac took Death Row to the next level. Snoop took the baton, he ran with it, he did a great job with it. But Tupac got the baton. Not only did he win the race, he finished so fast he was able to sit back and drink some Thug Passion and come up with another plan. If you'd asked Tupac that question, then was he planning on leaving Death Row, he definitely would cuss you out.
The second most popular conspiracy has been Suge Knight's involvement in Tupac's death. Now, you might think, why would a CEO of a record label want to get rid of his golden rapper? Some say that Tupac joined Death Row because he had no other choice, and he signed a 3-album contract in exchange for his $1.5 million bond and release from jail. Now, Tupac was not going to sit around like other rappers, so as soon as he reached California, he started recording his album, and by February 1996, his album, All Eyez on Me, released. It was his second album to chart at #1 on both the Billboard 200 and the top R&B hip-hop albums charts. Selling more than 500,000 copies in the first week, by mid-1996, Tupac was on his peak, having sold 5 million copies of album and having earned Death Row tens of millions of dollars. But even with everything going all right, Suge Knight's exploitative nature wouldn't spare anyone. Dr. Dre left Death Row because of Suge's lack of regard for anyone's safety. Even though Death Row was estimated to be worth $300 million, Suge Knight was exploiting Tupac and Snoop Dogg off their payments.
Publishing checks. When was the first time you seen a publishing check?
What is that?
Ooh.
You mean my first couple of years? What is that? Publishing? You mean I wrote all the deep cover, I wrote all the G thing, I wrote all the Dre Day, I wrote 70% of the Chronic, wrote all damn near 80% of Doggy Style, 70% of Warren G album, wrote 50% of Dog Pound album, wrote 60% of Murder Was a Case. And what is a publishing check? We don't know what that is.
Damn.
I'm Snoop Dogg, I'm the hottest in the world. Fuck publishing. What is that?
That was crazy.
And still ain't got it. Only time I get paid is when I perform. All that other shit, if you hear it, see it, nope.
On the other hand, Tupac was working on his new album after having released a double album, which shows Makaveli would have been counted his third album and contract would have ended after the release of Makaveli album. Along with that, a pending payment of around $10 million was awaited to be paid to Tupac at the end of contract. But just around a few days before release of his Makaveli album, Tupac would tragically pass away as a result of a drive-by shooting, which is speculated to be a targeted hit. There were already some questions about how a big guy like Suge was unaffected during heavy gunfire. As Tupac's rights were transferred to his mother and she established Tupac's estate, Amaru Entertainment, and a few years later, Suge even tried to sue Tupac's estate for around $50 million, but lost. During his last days, Tupac could be seen wearing a gold medallion chain worth around $30,000. This chain was actually going to be the logo of his rumored record label, Euthanasia Records, and had already established another record label named Makaveli Records. Now, Suge Knight was certain that Tupac was going to leave Death Row. Some people even indicated Tupac's subliminal message in his last music video, in which he can be seen burning a Death Row label card with rage in his eyes. Despite being unhinged, Suge being involved in Tupac's death seemed far-fetched, as no one would put themselves into such an unpredictable situation of life and death. The third conspiracy theory is that the FBI orchestrated Tupac's assassination in an attempt to end violent rap culture in the heat of the West Coast versus East Coast hip-hop battle. As Tupac released his first studio album, Tupacalypse Now, in 1991, it was bombarded with censorship requests and claims by the authorities, to an extent that the Vice President Dan Quayle demanded unsuccessfully that Time Warner pull the album from stores. "There is absolutely no reason for a record like this to exist," he said, just a month before the album release in October 1991. Two Oakland Police Department officers stopped Tupac for jaywalking at a downtown intersection. According to Tupac, officers Alex Boyovic and Kevin Rogers asked him for his ID and pressed him about his name before choking him, throwing him to the ground and slamming his head on the concrete. Tupac filed a $10 million lawsuit against the officers for police brutality. The case was settled for about $43,000. It was later revealed that this incident was the onset of Tupac's disease alopecia, which led him to shave his head bald. On the night of October 30th, 1993, Tupac performed at Clark Atlanta University. Following the show, Tupac and his friends were on the way to Sheridan Hotel to celebrate Halloween. Meanwhile, Clayton County Officer Mark Whitwell and his brother Henry County Officer Scott Whitwell and their two wives had just finished celebrating, Scott's wife passing the bar exam at the hotel. When they left and began to cross the street, they said an unrelated driver nearly struck them. An argument began that led to the two brothers fighting the black driver. When Tupac arrived, he saw the two white men beating the black driver in the middle of the road. Tupac jumped out and everyone in the caravan followed. The white men were visibly intoxicated, and Tupac responded to the drawn gun by pulling out his own. Then Mark Whitwell smashed Tupac's car window with the butt of his pistol, and Tupac fired 3 shots from his 9mm Glock. 2 of the bullets hit both men. Mark was shot in the abdomen and his brother in the buttocks. Tupac and his friends returned to his hotel room. Later on, he was arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault. The policemen who were wounded in the incident were treated at Grady Hospital and released the next day. Tupac pleaded not guilty and was released on a $55,000 bond. The charges against Tupac were dropped during a hearing on December 1st, 1993, as it was revealed that the 2 officers involved in a shooting incident were intoxicated at the time. Additionally, the investigators found out that both officers had been carrying guns that were stolen from a Henry County police evidence locker. One of the officers, Scott Whitwell, admitted to the theft. After looking at the evidence, it was revealed that Tupac had stopped to help as a good Samaritan and fired his gun in self-defense, which led to the charges against him being dropped. On November 30th, 1994, Tupac was attacked in the lobby of Quad Recording Studios in Manhattan. The evening was uneventful until Tupac, after receiving an invite to record, was confronted by 3 armed men in the lobby. They proceeded to rob and shoot him multiple times, leading to severe injuries. Tupac was shot a total of 5 times, but miraculously survived, and even was conscious enough to perceive his surroundings very well. It's very well known that despite having an idea who the shooter could have been, federal agents didn't show any interest towards progressing this case. In 1997, after 1 year of Tupac's death, a guy named King Tut was sentenced to 5 life terms for a robbery conviction and has been suspected of being one who robbed and shot Tupac. After Tupac's tragic death due to a drive-by shooting in 1996, it was already being rumored that he had been on the FBI's watch list for a few years. In 1997, a year after Tupac's death, FBI made statements and released official documents regarding Tupac's surveillance, where they stated, "This release consists of a 1997 investigation into allegations that extortionate, death threats have been made against Tupac and another rap artist by a domestic terrorist group called Jewish Defense League. Official documents regarding these are displayed on FBI's website under Freedom of Information Act." Now, all these events of the authorities revolving around Tupac really does make a strong argument for the conspiracy. FBI was somehow involved in Tupac's assassination, but there's an easy counter to that. Authorities have been involved in oppression of hip-hop artists since the 70s. Whether in the form of censorship or marketing restrictions, rappers have faced severe actions taken against them. One of the incidents being N.W.A.'s 1989 concert in Detroit, where they would start the concert with their controversial song, F the Police. They had hardly made it through 30 seconds of performance before the police officers opened fire at the stage, even with audience present. Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, and Eazy-E and other N.W.A. members were arrested and later released after giving their statements. It's safe to say that FBI's real motives have been to terrorize or divide rappers rather than getting rid of them. That's why many other rappers who faced similar oppression from authorities like Tupac are still around. A similar case would be of 50 Cent in the year 2000, who was shot 9 times by an unidentified man but miraculously survived, just like Tupac's 1994 attack. The similarity comes from survival as well as the lack of interest in solving or at least identifying the criminal. According to 50, he knew who the attacker was, but authorities don't want to do anything about it. The attacker himself suffered similar fate and died 3 weeks after his attack on 50 Cent.